Better times are coming if you just hold on.
Hi, this is Laura Hedlund, and this is our third Democracy Special, sponsored by ACLU's People Power and Let People Vote. Minnesota, we're proud about our election process, but are there areas of concerns? How can we strengthen elections and our democracy? Joining me now to co-host this special is Shea Hansen, a volunteer with ACLU's Let People Vote and People Power. Welcome, Shea. And I should let people know this is your song. You wrote and you're singing this song. It's great. I love it. And you have another one coming.
Yes, that first one, Hold On, is up on YouTube now. It's Hold On, an Anthem for Change. And the second one, Rise, America, Rise, will probably be up on YouTube today with that title. And
you got an amazing video with that, too.
Yeah, I really lucked out with some dedicated people who put together some nice pictures to look at.
So tell us about this idea for the third Democracy Special that we're doing. What are we? Why are we here today, and what are we talking about?
Well, I think that the main message that we need to get out to people is that Minnesota elections are safe. We have a wonderful Secretary of State, and they do a great job, and we get number one in voting. But it has been brought out, there are areas of concern, things that we need to watch out for, and we don't mean to scare anybody because nothing we say has happened yet, or you may not happen, but there's nothing wrong with being alert and aware and watching for problems and knowing how to deal with it.
And joining in now is Annastacia, and she's the Executive Director for Common Cause Minnesota. Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. So what types of issues would you like to point out?
Well, first I want to say thank you so much. Thank you for making intentional room to have this very important conversation. Shout out to Shea for her fabulous artistic skills and writing in the song. That was awesome. But first of all, for those of you that are not familiar with who we are, I'm the Executive Director for Common Cause here in Minnesota. My name is Annastacia Belladonna-Carrera. Common Cause is a nonpartisan national organization. We've got offices in 29 other states. And as I mentioned, I lead the Minnesota office. We do have a C4 arm, which some of you might be familiar with, which means that many times it's either relating to endorsements of candidates or political parties, et cetera. And I believe that we are the only C4 in the state of Minnesota that do not endorse political parties or candidates. We leverage our C4 status for strictly purposes of holding power accountable. And for us, that means that that based on our values and our core missions and vision is essentially, we don't feel that we can appropriately and authentically do that if we're also fundraising or door knocking or making these types of endorsements. So we take great pride in being able to focus on the issue and hold all political, not individuals, but parties in the spectrum accountable here in Minnesota. Last point, fun factoid I want to share with everyone is that nationally we're at almost 1.6 million across the country. And here in Minnesota, we've grown from a little over 18,000 to now 24,000, just over that threshold. So I'm super proud to say that we are able to have our base be representative of just as many wide partisan affiliations that you can think of. So this issue to us is very important. We care about all voters being able to cast a ballot. And as Shea mentioned, even within the context of what we're about to dig in a little deeper here, right, from Minnesota, I want to make sure that your public knows this. Please, please wrap yourselves in this amazing fact. In the state of Minnesota, we have secure and fair elections. Okay. I know it's sexy and it's super exciting sometimes to see the hot sexiness of the drama unfolding in other states. We don't have that here in Minnesota. We're proud of boring election cycles.
Yay, boring! Yay, boring! Yay, boring!
That's right. I work for boring every single election cycle because that's what we work for here in the state of Minnesota. So let's dive in. Let's dive in.
So you said, so you have 24,000 members, and I'm sure our listeners can join your members. So how does someone become a member of Common Cause?
Just jump on our website, www.commoncausealloneword.org/Minnesota. Or just Google us. Trust me, we're right up there on top. If you Google us, we're also on Facebook. If you look for us on Facebook and just look for Common Cause Minnesota, it'll pop right up. We, as Shea knows, I like to make sure that our Minnesota base is kept in real time informed. So during the session, I'm there. If they're there at 2 a.m, I'm there at 2 a.m, making sure I'm sharing that information with our base here in Minnesota. Same thing with Twitter. Follow us on Twitter. I know a lot of people are shying away from Twitter.
I don't do Twitter. Blue Sky.
Well, there's a little bit of the wackadoodleness going on there sometimes. But I think that's when we as beacons of fact and truth need to remain, right? We need to be those beacons that pedal in the shoe, right? That continues to reinforce facts, right? And control it. My favorite hashtag is facts, not fear.
Wonderful. Facts, not fear. Okay. Yeah. So are there some things we should be afraid of or fear for this election cycle?
I mean, I will say no. Don't be fearful. Be vigilant, because there's a difference between being vigilant and cautious and aware, as Shea mentioned, and being fearful. Fearful is a reaction to external perceived threats, right? And like I said, in Minnesota, we've had a little bit of sexiness, right, around some storylines that have been making the press. Sometimes you hear things about the errors that happened with absentee ballot being sent out to someone. I mean, there's a lot of new things that got moved, fabulous stuff that got moved in 2023, 2024. And, no system is perfect. And we know that. We know that no system is perfect. And because of that, we know that there are going to be mistakes, whether they're human error or just, errors in the system. They're going to be errors. That should not be a foundation of fear. That should be something that says, okay, this happened. Now, how do we correct it? And we do have someone in the Secretary of State's office that's his job. He says it all the time. I'm the chief, right? The chief executive officer of voting in Minnesota. He's the one that's responsible for making sure that as much as he's able to, they're on top of those things. And I think our track record speaks for itself. So back to your question about whether we should be fearful of something. No, we should not be fearful of anything. If you have any questions, if you see something, if you hear something that doesn't sit right with you, contact the office of the Secretary of State immediately. They have amazing people ready to help you, ready to answer the question. If you don't want to go that route, we're hosting a nonpartisan statewide hotline. There's a variety of different languages that are being accommodated through the hotline, including English, and that number is 1-866-OUR-VOTE. Again, that's 1-866-OUR-VOTE. That hotline is manned by nonpartisan attorneys from Minnesota that know Minnesota law and can walk anyone through any questions they may have, anything at all. If you have any other question that has to do with more of the where do I go vote? What am I going to need? Things like that, right? You could either jump right onto the Office of the Secretary of State's website. They have a buffet, also in different languages, of information as far as the nuts and bolts of voting early in person or voting by mail and all those deadlines. But you can also reach out to me. And I'm going to do this. I'm going to give you my email address because it's just this important. The email address for me is the letter A, and then Belladonna with 2 L's and 2 N's at commoncausealloneword.org. Please don't hesitate to reach out to me or Google us and send us, a message that way. You have the resources here, but do look out for this. Look out for messages that, as I said before, now we've been voters in the past, right? So we've got 2 layers of voters in Minnesota. Let's just say it that way. We've got mainstream voters that are what I call my repeat, civically engaged, super I am there to vote. I don't care what, right? Whether it's local or national or state, right? That information is out there, as I said, and all these different resources I've already given. They know what feels right to you, right? If you see something, a quote, a meme, a video that suddenly has Secretary Simon talking about political endorsement of something, or you know what I'm saying? Like something that you know doesn't seem to feel right. You know more likely than not that is not accurate, and you should be reaching out to the Office of the Secretary of State. If you hear a friend say something, jot it down. Go into the Office of the Secretary of State and look up the information. It is all there. Now, the other parallel group, remember I said 2 voters, right, are communities of color and indigenous communities in Minnesota. Unlike our mainstream voters, they're not out there at record-hitting national, voter turnout or voter registration. And there's a lack of parity with regards to the information that is available. Not in content, because I just said that the Office of the Secretary of State has information in multiple languages, but most communities of color don't necessarily relate to like, here's a flyer and here's a flyer and here's more paper and here's more paper, right? We're storytellers, right? We communicate, we trust the stories that we hear from those trusted voices in our communities, our clergy, right? People that we hold with regard, teachers, other people that we hold from regard, our elders in our community, right? Community watering holes, whether it's a community center or a park rec place or a nonprofit even, right? That's in the community. And is this information being communicated in a way that's meaningful for them, in a way that they can relate to? Because remember, many of our communities of color, including the Black African American community, don't have the most like softer side of Sears experience with government historically, right? So what mainstream Minnesota voters may think is trusted information coming from trusted sources because it's coming out of the Office of the Secretary of State or Common Cause even, right, may not be trusted as far as how these communities internalize that, right? And I can only say that one of the biggest canaries in the mine with regards to this lack of parity is just how voter friendly we have laws in the state of Minnesota, and yet we have such a divide, such a wide chasm of voter turnout and voter participation when it comes to elections, whether they're local or federal. And I think that's something that we need to like talk. That's what if you want to know about in Minnesota, what should be concerning to us, that should be concerning to us. It should be concerning that you have this lack of parity in our groups, in our communities of color when it comes to response. It's not because we don't care. That's an easy way out, right? They just don't care. They're not civically involved. Come with me. Come with me on any given time I'm out touring Southern and Northern and Minnesota. And you tell me if the groups of room full, wall to wall of people are not caring of what's happening. But caring to you may not be caring to someone else who's been disenfranchised from spaces of power, right? That conversation is uncomfortable, right? That conversation is uncomfortable, by the way, to both white allies and our communities, because I have such an amazing crew. Our election protection program right now is almost 200 deep. And the majority of those folks are just amazing volunteers and allies from our community, our mainstream communities. And one of the first things that they tell me is, I want to help, but I don't want to be disrespectful in the way I help. I don't want to walk in, as a white savior to anything. I want to come in as an authentic ally that is there to simply say, here I am. How can you use me? What can I do to help? Right? These are the conversations we need to have more of, and I'm not hearing them. They're not happening. They're just not happening. To me, that's the greatest threat to our democracy in the state of Minnesota. The fact that you have such an incredibly large segment of eligible voters that feel this disconnected. You can move 1,000 laws that are voter friendly, but if there's a disconnect in having the people that are impacted by these policies the most, right, not receiving that information in a way that's meaningful, then what's the point? Is the point then to just keep the regular majority Minnesotans voting? You don't need, I mean, not that you don't need, but do you know what I'm saying? Like, what's the point? And also, when you look at policy impact, if you're not seen in those numbers as a candidate, are you going to care? Are you going to care that our indigenous communities may experience democracy in such a vastly different way than non-indigenous people in the state of Minnesota? Are you going to care about this? People made fun of describing where you live to vote. Remember that? Oh, ha, ha, ha. I live by that rock. Oh, ha, ha, ha. Well, that's not funny. It's not funny because there are a lot of people living on reservations that don't have traditional addresses. Mm-hmm. That's not funny to their community. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
That's that really Annastacia just breaks open the whole field of how to approach making voting equitable. It does. Are there any examples of can't help but wonder, given the disconnect with the BIPOC communities, is there any examples of situations where that's been taken advantage of by maybe disinformation being directed towards them specifically?
Oh my God, absolutely. I mean, we don't even have to try that hard. Do you all remember the 2020 census? Right? And all of the, not just in Minnesota, but nationally, all the targeted disinformation geared towards immigrant populations here that talk to them about INS and, Homeland Security, driving through neighborhoods. So you couldn't, if you fill out the census, right? Or what about Project Veritas, mm-hmm. right? And that was targeting our Muslim community, the Somali population, in alleging that drop boxes were, sources of ballot harvesting and all this other stuff. And there was one case of someone breaking the law with regards to ballots. And that case was in Minneapolis and was caught like this and successfully prosecuted. So what we have in place works. We cannot build an election system based on one or two cases. Like that is the easiest rabbit hole anyone can fall into when you're talking about these issues of our election securities. Let me repeat this. The state of Minnesota has secure, safe, fair elections. It does. And I'd be the first one to talk to, that's what we do, hold power accountable. If that was not the case, just as I shared my concern that if you're going to be concerned about something in Minnesota, let's talk about the lack of parity in voter turnout and engagement, right? I would be the first one, Common Cause would be the first one to point a finger, to call the Secretary of State, to call, the election official, to call the city, clerk, if that's the case, and say, hey, what is going on with these votes, or what is happening with this process that we have so much going on? That's what we do. We hold power accountable. And so when I tell you that we do have secure and fair elections in the state of Minnesota, it's because I don't say it. The facts, the data, the process, the cases prove that that's the case.
So we do still have 1/5 of the eligible voting population that doesn't show up at the polls. And I think you're helping us to understand why. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And we're going to need to take a break. We're going to move on to the end. Is there anything else you'd like to say?
I just want to say that the best thing we can do to make sure that people have a positive experience voting, whether they're doing so at home, like through the absentee ballot, or early in person, or on election day, is to let's be good neighbors and educate ourselves by leveraging the Secretary of State's office information, by leveraging the information you'll find in our website at Common Cause Minnesota. And let's educate each other. Let's just have those friendly conversations. I'm not asking anybody to debate political partisanship. I'm asking people to simply make sure that you're sharing good information. The best way to counter and inoculate against disinformation and misinformation is to share good information. And something that was brought out through one of our partners, Clean Elections Minnesota, was that people trust information from people they know more so. And sadly, that's sometimes exploited, right? But if we just listen, we can control us, right? And our families and our friends, we can have those conversations. If we just have those conversations and make sure that we have, hey, listen, I just saw this on Facebook from the Secretary of State's office. Share it with them, right? let's just share the information. If you hear someone having a question about something, just say, hey, just call the Secretary of State's office or call the hotline at 1-866-OUR-VOTE. It's a nonpartisan hotline, right? They're just there to make sure you have what you need to be able to execute your vote. I think that's the best thing that we can do right now. And please don't be fearful. Fear comes from a stem, right? Fear is something that is innately inherent part of our survival instincts, right? When we feel threatened. No, we're not, we want boring, remember, boring elections. That's what we want in the state of Minnesota. And know that Common Cause Minnesota and our democracy partners, we've got boots on the ground to make sure that there are as little shenanigans. And you'll hear about the democracy defenders from Lilly with We Choose Us, another fabulous group. They're doing amazing work at the county level. The league is as well. So trust me, you don't have to be fearful. Just help us amplify the information. We've got people on the ground in places that have been problems in the past to make sure they know, right? Zero shenanigans in Minnesota.
Yeah, I love
We're
it.
fearless.
Yay. Fearless and boring. So you've been
boring. We want
fearless
boring.
and boring. So thank you, Common Cause Minnesota. We'll be right back with We Choose Us. You're listening to our democracy special.
Hold on. There's better times are coming. Hold on. And it won't be long. Hold on. There's better times are coming. Better times are coming. They put Dr. King in the Birmingham prison. Kept him in, but they couldn't hold his vision. He said, preach love and stand up against wrong. Come together and hold on.
Come together and hold on. This is Laura Hedlund, and you're listening to our third democracy special, sponsored by ACLU's People Power and Let People Vote. The music that you're hearing is from Shea Hansen, who is joining us to co-host. And right now we welcome Lilly Sasse. She is the director of We Choose Us Action. So welcome to this democracy special.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Share a little bit about the background on We Choose Us Action.
Sure. So we have two organizations, We Choose Us and We Choose Us Action. We started building our campaign in January of 2021. We are a coalition of over now 40 community organizations who are working to build multiracial democracy in the state of Minnesota. And the reason that we came together in January of 2021 is because we really have been seeing unprecedented levels of public attacks on our democracy and our democratic institutions, which leaves an opening for us to be able to actually go on offense and talk about all the ways that we want to both protect and expand access to our democracy in Minnesota. And so many of our partner organizations do democracy work every day, whether it's democracy in the workplace as labor unions, or it's democracy through the communities that they interact with on a daily basis, getting people to vote, but also getting people to advocate for the issues that they care about in grassroots organizations or issue-focused advocacy organizations. Haven't always been brought into the democracy policy conversation, but those are exactly the people we want to be hearing from, who are connected to community, who know what the barriers are to accessing our democracy. As I think we heard Annastacia talk about, we see a lot of barriers to access and so many opportunities to be able to expand who has access to our democracy, both at the polling locations on election day, but also year round, and how to advocate for the things that impact our lives and experience agency through our democratic processes. So we took the opportunity of some of the very blatant attacks on our democracy to, yes, talk about them, but also pivot towards the democracy that we can and should have, with people at the center, not big money, not corporations, not dark money, but really of, by, and for the people. So we've been focused on expanding access to our democracy through voting rights, through money and politics reforms, through redistricting reforms, but then also to talking very publicly about the attacks on our democracy, what we're seeing, where that's coming from, why, and trying to make sure that the majority of Minnesotans are on the side of the democracy that we can and should have, protecting and expanding it instead of undermining it.
I think the thing that excites me about We Choose Us is that you have really all these groups can be isolated a little bit in their little pockets, and you've brought them together to really get a whole voice. It seems really important to me.
Yeah, thanks, Shea. It's I would agree with you, and exciting that we're doing this work and have been for the last few years.
So Annastacia Project is one of your organizations. Some of the other organizations, and people, you may name the website so people can go to the website and see all the organizations.
Yes. So all of our partners are listed on wechooseuSMN.com/partners. We have, like I said, over 40 organizations, and I won't start naming them just, for the sake of not forgetting any. But they range from issue advocacy organizations, just starting out grassroots organizations, labor unions, all across the board, working on a whole variety of different issues, all understanding that the thing that undergirds them all is that we have to have a thriving democracy that centers people in order to get the things that our communities need to thrive. There are so often issues that the majority of Minnesotans or the majority of Americans want to see change in our communities, and we can't because there are barriers in our democracy in order to be able to get the things we need to thrive. So head to our website, wechooseuSMN.com, to see all of our partners.
So let's talk about some of the problem areas. And I liked when she was saying facts, not fear. I really do like that. Let's get factual. But there are some problems. Do you want to talk about some of them, Shea? What are some of the issues you want to talk about?
Well, on a statewide level, I'm more versant on the national problems. But I think that We Choose Us, and Lilly specifically, has done some research on problem areas, as I understand it, and I'd really be interested in hearing what you've come up with.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think Annastacia is 100% right. We should absolutely not be afraid. We have free, fair, safe elections in Minnesota, and we want to keep it that way. And we have seen, as we've seen more public, blatant attacks and attempts to undermine our democracy on the national level, we've also seen them here in Minnesota, mostly taking the form of mis and disinformation and how that plays out in real time. So the mis and disinformation we hear about our elections, the election denial, the suggestion that there's somehow a conspiracy happening behind the scenes that's not counting people's votes, or people who are ineligible are casting ballots and shouldn't be, that is all not true and has been proven time and time again to not be true. However, there are a set of people, and it is not accidental, it is people in power who are trying to divide us and distract us from each other, to be pointing fingers at our neighbors and accusing each other of things that aren't happening so that they can maintain their own power. They are perpetuating this lie. This election denialism, the big lie that is spread into, frankly, every corner of the state. It's really taking advantage of people who, frankly, might just have questions about our elections, might not know enough, and is pushing mis and disinformation to the point where people are absorbing it and really believing it, and then showing up and feeling like our systems don't work, and showing up as a result. So there's been a big push to move from machine counting to hand counting. We know that hand counting of ballots is not an efficient way to do it. It results in more human error. That's been talked about by the Office of the Secretary of State, proven in the court of law, and through many, many research studies. And yet there is something around this idea that our machines aren't to be trusted, or our elections aren't to be trusted, or our elections officials aren't to be trusted. That really is upsetting to people, and then causes a whole chain reaction of organizing. People showing up at county board meetings, trying to pass resolutions to change the way that we hand count ballots, writing stories and op-eds that just simply aren't true, and scares a lot of people into thinking that our elections are not free and fair. We know that they are. So it is really a snowball effect of mis and disinformation that really scares people, and then causes a whole bunch of actions as a result that are, frankly, a waste of time and energy because these things aren't true. There's another idea out there that it's the Secretary of State himself that counts ballots. That is simply not true. We have 30,000 of our friends and neighbors in Minnesota who step up to be election judges every year. We have professional, nonpartisan election officials who are in charge of our elections at the county level. The Secretary of State, he oversees our laws and the process, but is not the one to count ballots on election day. We have so many checks and balances in place in Minnesota. We have the public accuracy tests where we test our machines ahead of the elections. We have our post-election review where we verify that the machine count was accurate. We have the county board certification. We have the state canvassing board certification. There are so many different things in place in Minnesota elections. Often that sound really boring, but make sure that our elections work as they should and that any mistakes, because mistakes happen, we're all humans, the small amount of mistakes that do are corrected, caught early, and handled, because that's how our elections work and have always worked. So it is the snowball effect of mis and disinformation that comes from people who want to distract and divide us to maintain their own power. That is really the problem and what we're seeing most of in Minnesota. There are a couple counties where we see this we have seen this particularly nefarious activity in the past. And there are many articles about it. You can look it up online, and the Star Tribune has reported on it. But Rice County, Anoka County, Dakota County, they have in the last few years experienced this, I think, at higher levels because of some of the intentional organizing that's been happening in those counties. And some of these places where we see it happening, as we see in other states across the country, are places that have closely contested races with small margins of victory, be it Democrat or Republican. We see it in counties where there are growing BIPOC and immigrant populations, because that is often a lot of the mis and disinformation is a dog whistle calling into question the legitimacy of the votes of our immigrant friends and neighbors and BIPOC friends and neighbors. And then two, where there has been some anti-democracy organizing activity in the past, either around school board races or county board races, that is popping up again in 2024. But there is no reason to be scared, just vigilant about any mis and disinformation you see pivoting to our elections are free and fair in Minnesota. We know that. There are checks and balances in place, and our neighbors, our friends and neighbors, are the ones who maintain our election system and nonpartisan election judges. That is the key thing we want to hammer home. And make sure that we flag in our minds any mis and disinformation, try to correct the record with our friends and family who may be questioning, and check out the Office of the Secretary of State's website. They have so many great resources, including a fact versus fiction website page that you can go to that explains some of the mis and disinformation we see and the actual factual what happens in Minnesota elections.
And again, we can reiterate anybody who's going to that the toll-free line. What is it? 866 our vote is Common Cause, or directing questions to the Secretary of State's office.
Yes,
because we're not powerless.
We're not powerless. No. We're not really claiming our power. No. And I love that, facts, not fear. But as far as this anger and indignation and alienation that many of people are experiencing, how do we offer truth? And I think pointing out some facts is a way of helping that. So, and Shea, I know we have about 15 minutes left in the show, and there's a lot we want to cover because you want to talk about some of the stuff going on nationally. And then we can...
Definitely. And I'll talk fast here, and if you don't mind, I'll use my little crib notes. I want to just say something first about, that seems a little off topic, but about sociopathology, that it seems like it's a true fact. And I am not a mental health professional, but I worked for 10 years as a teacher in a maximum security male prison and studying these people. And I think that in times of stress and polarization, sociopaths that exist in the population tend to come to the fore, and we need to understand that, and it helps us to understand some of the things going on the national level. Sociopaths have no empathy, no ethics. We don't know if it's inherited or learned or both, but they don't go for treatment because they don't think there's anything wrong with them. And it's hard to imagine their thinking, because most of us are hardwired to have empathy and to think about, right and wrong. And so it's a little like if you tried to imagine the color orange being gone from the world, you just couldn't do it. And that's a way trying to think about how sociopaths think. Most sociopaths live therefore not for love as most people do, but for power. And they love to find loopholes that they can sneak through to say that they're legitimate. They use people, they are great actors, and they can feign human emotions that they don't feel. They have an uncanny ability to corrupt the people they come in contact with. We see that a lot. The takeaway from all this is that because these times bring this to the fore, we can expect, we should really not be thinking if illegitimate tactics are going to be used, but assume that they are, because that's in the nature of some of the sociopathology. So I'm going to break this down. I want to be completely nonpartisan. Dirty tricks are equal opportunity all the way around. And we don't know what whoever group is going to come up with. But I'll break this down. Before the election, international interference, the FBI has released information on Russia has developed more sophisticated techniques, particularly involving U.S. collaborators and even going down ballot. Put 10 million into it. Iran, on the other hand, is supporting Harris, though we don't know in what way. The Saudis, one good news, we were worried about the Saudis deciding to not drill in order to raise oil prices, which you call inflation, which could be blamed on the Trump-Harris administration, which they are against. But they got madder at Iran, I guess, for being uppity lately. And so they decided to drill like mad in order to lower oil prices. And because Iran is so dependent on oil. So good news there, we lucked out. We want to point out that Trump lost the Electoral College in 2020 by very little. Actually by a lot, excuse me. And it would have taken numerous states changes in order to change the outcome. That's not true this year. It looks like it's going to be really close, and even one state holding up the certification of the election could really make a difference, drive it to the Supreme Court or to the House of Representatives, where Trump would immediately win, because every state gets one vote when that is sent that way. We could possibly see more assassination attempts that could be blamed on the Democrats or whatever. I am a little concerned that the question of whether or not the assassination attempts have been an inside job, I don't think has been covered, adequately allowed. The FBI said it was it could have been shrapnel that hit Trump. So I don't know. We need to keep alert and aware. As far as lawsuits, the RNC is getting ready for more lawsuits. Remember the ones in 2020? They have already filed 100 lawsuits, and they're mostly contesting possible non-citizen voting or problems with mail-in ballots. These cases went nowhere in 2020. 2 convicted and sent to jail for frivolous lawsuits. But we don't know if they perfected their methods anyway, so we're watching that. But in the meantime, we're getting really good results, some good results for the suits that are being covered. The wet signature law in Arkansas, that they were contesting the computer signatures on ballots, was struck down. You can now have a computer signature. Alabama was required to quit purging voters looking for non-citizen registrations, but purging 20% of the ones they purged were citizens. The southern states have left ERIC. ERIC is a system by which the states compare, so you can't vote in 2 states. but some of the southern states have left that, so their information is not as accurate anymore. In Nebraska, contested, the people convicted of felonies can now vote upon release. The situation in Georgia that everybody's so concerned about, the state court, Supreme Court has decided that it would be illegal for local officials to refuse to certify and send the votes to the state. They have to do it, and they have to on time. And if they suspect fraud, they turn that into to the law enforcement. And also, the law that would have required hand counting in Georgia has been struck down also. So disenfranchisement, vigilantes are challenging multiple voters. They don't even know these people. They'll challenge thousands. One person will challenge thousands. The Transformative Justice Coalition claims they're getting the names of the people they challenge from an organization called True to Vote, which they say is a Trump front. I don't know, but just to be aware, this same organization, Transformative Justice Coalition, has command centers in a number of states, and the Bar Association is with them, cooperating with them, so that they have a number that you can call if you see any problems, and I will try to find that number and give it to you by the here it is, 866-OUR-VOTE, or 866 TJC vote. TJC, of course, is Transformative Justice Coalition. So, we don't need to be afraid because we're ready.
Well, there was a lot of information you covered, Shea. So were you going to say one more thing? Because I know it's a lot to take in. And you're right, there's a lot of people that are working really hard, but there also is a lot of people that want power and they don't care about inclusive democracy. They just want their side to vote. And one of the most powerful things that we can do is ensure that we're not mimicking that either. We want all people to vote. We really do need we need all these voices. And yet I also think to really try to connect with some of the emotions, and going back to that idea of facts, not fear, that those emotions of anger and indignation and alienation and all that churn that doesn't feel like democracy. I want democracy to feel good. Yeah, and that's why one of the little things, I'm going to jump back to Lilly now because I love the name We Choose Us, because I think that's a great name. It's about... Well,
can I jump in?
Please do.
Couple more things that people could be looking at while we're covering the whole thing is there are instances of intimidation. Texas is 60% color. How come they're red? And also, we're concerned about after the election that there could be an attempt not to seat the new people coming in, that would be a possibility also. I'm done.
Okay, so I love that, Shea, and I'm gonna. We've got about 6 minutes left, and so
okay, let's go to Lilly.
So Lilly, tell us a little bit more about. And again, I love the name We Choose Us, because how do we, including all people, right, come together to choose us?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and the reason we named the coalition We Choose Us is because that's what we believe our democracy is about. It's about us. It's about all of us. It's, we put people in office who we feel best represent our values and vision for what we want our country or community to be. But at the end of the day, it really is about us and our communities and the things that we need to thrive. I think, this year it is about thinking about who best represents our values and our vision for what we want this country to be. Some contrasting visions for a pro-democracy future, or maybe not. I think that we need to keep having conversations about how we center people in our democracy, how we build a truly people-centered, people-powered democracy with each other, how we have hard conversations about the things that we believe and the values we hold and why or why not, how we, work through tension. I think that we've perhaps shied away from having those tough conversations and can get back to trying to find some common ground or common cause, even if we don't fully agree on every single issue. As Secretary Simon says, like, a democracy does not mean that we all share the same opinion. We should be allowed to freely express our opinions, vote for the people that we feel best represent our opinions and the values we hold. But that doesn't mean we have to agree on a day-to-day basis with each other. We just need to try to be as inclusive as we can, as all perspectives, all lived experiences in our democracy. And I think that there's more advocacy that we can do too, to protect and expand structural elements of our democratic institutions that will definitely come back in future legislative sessions to do more of as well.
Yeah, that because I think underneath a lot of these feelings of anger and indignation and alienation is a feeling of powerlessness. And Shea, this is what we talked about in our first. Democracy is about us choosing us and how we build that and believe it, because and create it at the same time.
Well, I think the prior shows indicated that a lot of this stress in our democracy comes in times when we are in necessity of making choices about our direction, choices that aren't just trivial, that really affect, as for instance, the Hayes election back whenever that was, inflicted 100 years of Jim Crow on blacks in the South. I mean, these are vital decisions. And in a way, we can expect that this conflict is kind of healthy in a way, because it indicates that we are involved in this process, a very rigorous process of deciding how to go. And I guess, 1/5 of Minnesotans did not vote. And I hear from people, well, I don't vote because it doesn't make any difference. Well, of course it didn't make any difference. You didn't vote. If we'd all vote, we could get administrations that would really reflect the population. So let's get out there. I'm like 100% voting this year.
Yeah.
Let's go for it.
And that fear and that anger and that indignation, that also turns people off from voting, right? Because it's like, oh, I don't want all that politics. Ick. No, politics is not icky. Politics is fun. So I'm going to end on that. We got last minute here. Anything you want to say? But I guess mine is fun and boring Minnesota politics. Let's make it be. Anything you want to say, Shea or Lilly?
I'm just grateful to Lilly bringing in all this information for people. It may be a little hard and stressful sometimes to realize, you want to shy away from it, but, people when there's a tornado, people don't want to hear about it, but they have to.
Yeah. And I think, lastly, I think that our politics is how we care for each other. And through organizing and building power with people, not over people, as our democracy has been designed for so many years, we can really come together to make the differences that we need to make in our communities and in our state and in our country. We are mostly focused on Minnesota, and so I've been organizing with people all across the state to offer their own stories and experiences and facts about how our democracy works, showing up at their county board meetings, offering positive testimony, building relationships with local elections officials, learning more about the process. I would just really encourage people, though elections administration sounds like a boring title and maybe the public accuracy test sounds boring to you, there are a lot of fascinating elements and things we don't know about our democracy that I would encourage folks to dig into and experience for yourself, and absolutely get out and vote, because while it's not everything, it is the first step in participating in our democracy. And it's a way for us to show our voice, our values, and what we care about.
Show our voices and our values and what we care about. Thank you so much, Shea. Thank you, Lilly. And thank you for listening to this Democracy Special.
Come together and hold on.